Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Geeking Out podcast. I am the Athletic Geek, and joining me this week is Polly Launay, who I just bought some really awesome artwork from a few weeks ago at Cape Comic Con. You can see that in the cover photo, but she's got quite the gallery of some amazing art pieces. So, first of all, Miss Launay, thank you for coming on the show.
Well, I appreciate you having me very much.
So, my first question for all my artists that come on here is when did you first become interested in drawing and painting? When did you find out that this was something you enjoyed doing or that you had a knack for doing it? When was that?
Probably my sixth grade year, I took a art class in junior high and found that I loved art. I loved drawing. I had a really awesome art teacher. He's still a really good friend of mine. His name is Don Korn. He lives in Robinson, Illinois,
Okay.
and he he really I started doing a lot of extra drawing and taking it to him after class, and he would give me pointers and help me just help me get better. So I took art class in like junior high and maybe 1 year of high school, and the rest is all just self-taught. Just taught myself how to. I
Oh,
just sat
really?
and yeah, I just picked out things to draw and picked out things that I thought would be difficult, and I made myself do it. And I tried to, just hone my skills in by just doing really difficult things. So I'm still learning. I'm still figuring it all out. You never stop learning. If you think you're there, then you're wrong. You're never really there. You can always get better. So I'd say probably sixth grade is when I found that I really had a love of art and that I could do it. So
So you never pursued through higher education. Never took any art classes in college, or not to
no,
go too
sir.
detailed on when you went to like where you went to high school or anything like that, but did they offer more art classes as the grades progressed, or
Yeah,
uh,
they offered it all through high school. I think with my schedule it just didn't work, and I knew I could pursue it on my own. So that's really all I did was probably junior high and 1 year high school, and then that was about it. So everything else I basically just taught myself to do, or maybe once in a while if it's a certain technique that I don't know about, I'll watch a YouTube video on it or something.
right?
So it's yeah, I'm pretty much learned by doing kind of um, mentality.
There's going to be a section of people that see the art pieces that I've chosen for the cover photos, I should say, and they are not going to believe a word you just said because they're just that amazing looking. Uh,
Like
but we so you kind of said you self taught. What are some things that, like, how would you describe like the style, like, of how you draw? Like, do you have a particular style, or do you just kind of do
I
what you do?
well, when it comes to painting, I think my style is almost like graphic novel type art.
Okay.
I really love bright colors. I love contrast. Um, and you see that a lot in graphic novels and comics and things like that. Now I can do realism too, but I for whatever reason, my eye is drawn to that high contrast type art, and I love to do that. I've kind of developed my own style with that, and I've just rolled with it. Don't change it if it's not, if you don't need to. Now, if I'm using like a pencil, because I work in different mediums, so if I'm using charcoal or just lead pencil, I can get into a lot more detail and do more like realism and things like that. So it's different depending on which medium I'm using. Um, I also work with colored pencil. I use the Prismacolor colored pencils, and they're real soft lead, and they blend really well, kind of like paints do. And I do a lot of realism work with that. I can do some really cool stuff with colored pencils. So it just depends on which medium I'm working with as to the style of art that I'm doing. But I'd probably have to say acrylic paint is probably my favorite medium to work with. I used to use only pencil. I'd only do pencil drawings. I don't know why I was scared of color so much. It didn't make sense. I guess maybe I just wasn't comfortable with it. But I'd say probably about 5 or 6 years ago, someone commissioned me to do a painting, and I hadn't worked with paints in so long, and it scared me to death. But after I did that first painting, I was like, I got this. I love this. And I just progressed with it. So that for the past like 5 or 6 years, I've really mostly just been doing acrylic painting.
Okay. So the two pieces that I bought from you at the convention, I bought the Deadpool and the Spock. Is that acrylic paint, or were any of those colored
Yeah,
pencils, or?
yeah. No, those two are both acrylic paint. So yeah, those were on both. I think they're both 11 by 14 size paintings that I did of those.
Awesome.
So yeah, I, those were acrylic.
They're both really awesome, and the prints that I have are proudly hanging up in my game room. So thanks again for that. So
Yeah, no problem.
you mentioned you do a graphic novel style, and you've been, we met at a comic book convention. Are you a fan of the nerdy comic book sort of, you know, genre, or is that just something you like to draw? So, basically, are you interested in any of the nerdy things that you see at these conventions?
Yes, I am. I otherwise I probably wouldn't be there.
You'd be
Funny,
surprised at some of those, though.
that's true. That's a whole different world there, and if it's not something you're used to, walking into it, it could be kind of a shock. But no, when I was in high school, my art teacher that got me started with art was a huge comic fan. I mean, huge. And he went to all of the major comic conventions. And he really got me interested in, especially Marvel comics. And then it progressed from there. But he actually, when I was, oh, I don't know, I was well out of college. I was in my 20s. I went with him to Chicago to the big comic convention up in Chicago with its Wizard Con, I think is what it was, Wizard
Okay.
World. And after that, I was like, oh my goodness, this is so amazing. And that's when I really got hooked on the comic conventions. So
They are
yeah,
very
I
addicting. It's been a rough year for them, but they're. I had a
really has.
similar I had a similar experience when I first went. I just wanted to keep going. Like I wanted just to mainline conventions and the experience around it. But did what all did you see at Wizard World? That was it the artists? Was it the vendors? Was it the costumes? Was it the actors and actresses?
It was
Uh,
everything because they had all the big names there. I mean, that was right when Lord of the Rings had just come out.
okay.
So they actually had some of the of the Rings actors there.
Oh wow.
And like the giveaways and free stuff, like if you got there early, was all Lord of the Rings stuff. And I actually have some ceramic pipe replicas from like the movie set that I had been given, as a one of the first people there, you walk in kind of thing. I had picked up a few of those from that con, and I still have them because they're amazing. But yeah, it was so huge. I mean, it was Chicago, and it was this massive convention center, and I was surrounded by such amazing artists and just stuff I'd never even known about. Like I was just like, I don't even know this stuff exists. Like, and I had my little or my sketchbook that I carried around with me, and I got sketches all weekend long from some big artists, especially Kevin Eastman, one
Oh
of the
wow. Nice.
artists. And I got my picture with him, and I have one of his sketches. I think he did Michelangelo for me because it's my favorite turtle. And I
Awesome.
have a picture with him and a sketch of Michelangelo from him. And just some big names like that. And I cherish that sketchbook because it's got some amazing art in it. So it really got me excited about that. I mean, I'd always been a fan of comics and any kind of sci-fi anything or anything like that. It's always been Star Trek, Star Wars, any of it. But that just really heightened my awareness of it all, and that was a whole different world that I had never known about. It was really great.
You mentioned Kevin Eastman. Do you have a what other sort of major comic artists do you remember collecting artwork from, or even if they're not major, are there any other pieces in that sketchbook that really stand
There
out to
are
you?
get it to look because I can't remember. It was in the early 2000s, so I
Right,
can't even remember some of. But if I looked at it, I'd be able to know and tell you. But I don't have that readily available at the moment.
that's fine. But on kind of on the same plane as that, are there any other artists that you know, in the comic book world, or just anywhere that you kind of you like their style or you like the artwork they've done, be it from a book or from something a piece you've seen? Is there anybody that comes to mind just that you're a fan of?
Not particularly because I don't always follow the artists as much as I follow the comics. So, and I know that's really bad.
Hey,
I
that's
don't
okay.
always name the artist names, but because I'm, if you were talking about music, I could tell you all kinds of stuff. But in the
Right,
art world, I follow artists, but I know I like it if I like it when I see it. So,
right.
unfortunately, I can't really throw out really anything else right now to let you know who I like or who I don't like.
It's all good. But sticking with the comics, do you remember any comics you enjoyed reading, or any the comic movies you enjoy? Is there any? Do you remember which? You said you mentioned you really like Marvel comics. Was there like a few, any in particular, where you're like, that's my comic that you kind of point to as like
Oh
this
yeah,
was my
definitely.
jam?
Anything having to do with Wolverine.
Nice.
And I was a huge now like back in the early '90s. They had okay, so there was these Marvel comic card collections,
Yes.
and I think there were four different sets, and I have every single one of them. I bought individual packets until I had a full set, holograms and everything. And I would sit with these cards and study them. Now, obviously, I read the comics too, but these sets of Marvel comic cards, that was a huge thing then. I have no idea if they're even worth anything. Not that I would sell them because I love them so much and I worked so hard to get those sets. But like anything having to do with Wolverine, I was a huge fan of the Beast. So any of the comics that I could find with the Beast in it, and Silver Surfer. I was a huge
Okay.
fan of Surfer.
Well, that's fun.
So any kind of comics that I could get my hands on with those guys. And then of course in the early '90s, my ultimate jam was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And still to this day, they're probably my favorite of anything. Not really sure I like where the art went with some of the newer comic um, the TV cartoons and some of
Right.
that movies and stuff. I not don't really care for that. Don't really care for
Okay.
that art. I really like the early '90s version of the Turtles, which I do have paintings of those.
Hmm.
Um, I do have those available if anybody's interested. But yeah,
We'll post a link to you. Are they available on Instagram?
yeah, I have both my Facebook Polly Lene art page and Instagram, and I haven't gotten those up on Etsy yet, but I do have a Etsy shop
All
that I
right.
put all my work on, so
I'll post
they'll
links in the
go up on.
description box for you when this goes up. So if anybody's interested in buying anything, we'll definitely hook you up there.
Definitely. So yeah, anything Ninja Turtles. Oh my goodness, I had everything. I collected all the figurines and everything.
Do you like the new Turtles movies?
Um, don't really care for them. They were okay, but I still prefer the original movie, the first one that came out.
Well, here's a bigger turtle question, because this one, always sparks a lot of debate among the Turtles fans. Do you prefer the original movies or the cartoon series? The original cartoon series.
Original cartoon series, probably. I prefer it the most. But I liked the first and the second Turtles movie. Didn't care for the third one. That was just stupid.
Seems to be the general consensus.
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of liked the movies because it kind of brought them to real life. They weren't in cartoon form. They were more like real life form. And for me, that was just super cool because that made them just so that much more real. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, ooh, these could possibly be a thing. Of course they aren't, but
Right.
as a kid, you kind of fantasize about that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, like that's why I was like, whenever I could see live action Batman or the X Men, it's like, oh yeah, that's what Wolverine would look if he were a real a real person, or that's what Batman would
Exactly.
look like if he were a real person.
Exactly. So that's it. Kind of brought it to real life for me, and I was so excited when that movie came out. I can remember how amazingly excited I was about that.
Um,
Probably about as excited as I was when the first Jurassic Park movie came out.
so you mentioned, you were a before you started going to conventions as a featured artist, you were going there as a fan. Do you have any fond memories meeting any actors or actresses? Because that was kind of originally what drew me to conventions, was getting to meet celebrities, getting to meet Stan Lee and Jason David Frank, Henry Winkler, people like that, and then subsequently seeing the quote unquote big name published artists, but then that trickling down, and then I see the local artists that also have a lot of talent, and then now I like to seek out the more local artists because you know they're the people that need the exposure, and it's really cool making connections. Do you have any good stories of meeting actors or actresses?
I can honestly say no, and here's why. Um, I even when I was young, I never was one of those people that, oh, I've got to get an autograph. I've got to get, I want to meet this. If I could just like, I didn't even have to talk to them because if I could just see them and know that they were there, that was good enough for me. And at some of these big conventions, it cost an arm and a leg to meet these people or to get an
Yes.
autograph. And I never had that kind of money. And to me, as much as I admire the big names, I was never one to be in so much awe that I felt I had to get an autograph or I had to let them know who I was. Like, I've never been that kind of person. Like, I'm just like, they're just another human, just like I am. Obviously, they make more money and everybody knows them, but I guess I've never segregated people into importance by who they are. You know what I mean? So it
Yes.
never was for me a big thing to, oh, I've got to have this person's autograph or a picture. Now, if I could just say hey and have a normal conversation and it not be like, okay, okay, let's get this picture, let's get this autograph, blah, blah, blah. I mean, to me, that means a heck of a lot more than anything else. But I never really wanted to stand in the line, never wanted to pay the money. So, no, I really don't have any stories. And I will say I was pretty excited this past weekend at Cape Con to meet Flash Gordon. I did get to sit and talk with him, and he was just a super, super cool, real guy. So that was really cool.
He was a cool guy. So
he,
some
uh, he was just really fun to talk to. Like before the con started, after I got my booth set up, I just went over and talked to him for a long time. He was just a cool, down to earth guy, and I really enjoyed that. That was fun.
So when did you start becoming an artist at conventions yourself? Do you remember what your first convention was, or what year, or what got you
Yeah,
started in all of that?
it's I've just started doing it within the past couple years, honestly, because like I said, my artwork, I didn't by nature, my primary thing is I'm a musician, which we might talk about that later. If not, that's fine. But I'm a musician by nature, and art was always just a hobby for me. It was
Right.
just something I did to like, oh, I'm gonna draw this for so and so as a present, And it wasn't until the last, like I said, like 4 or 5 years did I really get into it and think, I could really get good at this and make this more of like a profitable thing. And that's when I really started focusing on using it as like an enterprise to to sell art, because I found that people really enjoyed what I did. So that's when I'm like, okay, I love comic conventions, I love comics, I love painting and drawing comics. Why don't I start going to these conventions? So actually my first one was only a couple of years ago. It was in Metropolis for Superman Days.
Awesome.
And I also did one, I think maybe a few months before that, actually in Robinson. It was a little collectibles and art show, and I had a booth there. And that's how I got into it. And I was signed up to do a bunch more this year, and everything's been canceled. So
Unfortunately.
I really enjoy doing them. Not even if, say, I didn't sell a lot, it's not necessarily a bad thing because I get to meet cool people. I get to meet other artists. I get to network, and to me, that's kind of what it's all about.
Right.
That's what I do because I love it, and it's fun to be with other people that enjoy the same things that I do.
Absolutely. It's kind of, I mentioned earlier that I was all about the guests, and I still, there still has to be some people I want to drive to meet, but it's kind of like you cut for me personally. You come for the guests, but then you stay to see everything else, meet so many new people. Just going to Cape Girardeau. Yeah, I went there to meet Flash Gordon and get my mom an autograph for her birthday, and to meet a couple of the wrestlers that they had booked. But then some of the biggest takeaways of that weekend was meeting artists like yourself and meeting other vendors and getting to talk with them, getting to connect with them, and just meeting people in line. I mean, like I've never not gone to a convention and then ended up making some friend that I would talk comics or wrestling or anime
Exactly.
or video games with, like, after the convention was done.
It's kind of like just the camaraderie of it.
Absolutely.
It's like-minded people, and it's fun. It's just, and
Yes.
like the people that were across the way from me, that young couple that had a booth, we became good friends, and I'm sure that we'll be contacting each other and still talking with each other. And I just met some really cool people this past
Oh,
weekend. So
absolutely.
I was very happy with this last weekend.
It was a good. It was a it was a good convention. I know there was a lot of we won't get too deep in it. There was a lot of iffiness around the around them having this convention, but overall, I think it was done in a safe and well done way with everything going on.
I agree. They had good standards in place and they enforced them, so it was good.
Yes. So you mentioned being a musician,
Uh huh.
and I've seen some videos on your Instagram, of you playing the violin, and very very well done. I really enjoyed it, and it's not usually my jam, but I that was great. Um, Including, you've made your own songs and your own music videos, which I think is pretty cool. But before we get into that, take me through what got you interested in the violin.
Okay. Um. So I grew up in a little town called Oblong, Illinois. It's a little town of 1,600 people in the middle of nowhere up in central Illinois, and we had we did not have any kind of music in schools other than band. We didn't. I didn't even know what a violin was. And right before my third grade year, we moved to Florida, and the academy that I attended while we lived in Florida offered violin lessons. And they had a little orchestra, and I saw these kids with these violins, and the guy that was the violin instructor, I really liked him and had a lot of respect for him, even as a kid. And I went home one day and I told my mom and dad, I said, I'm going to learn to play the violin. So they kind of looked at me weird because that was just really out of the blue. No one in my family plays or anything. So they got me a violin, and I started taking lessons, and I just went from there. My degree is in music, and that's what I do. I'm a full-time musician. So I play everything from bluegrass to classical to jazz, hip hop, you name it, I do it. So I really enjoy music. So I started playing at 8 years old, and I've been playing ever since.
Oh, so you when did you start recording your own music? Do you have any, through?
Yeah, it would have been about 2007 ish, 2008. I started. I got a little studio set up in my home, and started doing demos and writing songs and recording them, and just kind of went with there. I'm a freelance violinist, meaning I do a lot of solo shows, but I also play with a lot of different groups. I've played in the Paducah Symphony. I do a lot of traveling. In fact, next weekend I'll be in Nashville. I've got a gig there next weekend. So
Tennessee,
I just
since we
I
have
play.
quite a few people in the Southern Illinois that listen to this, Tennessee or Illinois for Nashville.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee. Yeah, sorry,
Gotcha.
I forget that we have a Nashville just across the way from here. Yeah, no, Nashville, Tennessee.
That's
I've
awesome.
got to be there next weekend. So, yeah, I do a lot of traveling with music. So when I'm not playing music, I'm doing art. And when I'm not doing art, I'm playing music or I'm running. Uh, so
So you've had I noticed on your Instagram that Saturday you recorded your own music video. What is something like that like? Because I've never seen anybody do that. Like other than like some kind of some cheaper ones that my friends did just messing around. But like yours actually pretty high quality, and you're a professional musician. What is it like? How did you go about creating music videos? And take me through the process of creating a music video.
well, let's see. It would have been about I don't know, about 6 years ago. I decided, I'd really like to, because I found that when I would put audio online, people were much less apt to just click on something and just listen to it as they would to listen to it while watching a video. And I
Right.
thought, well, maybe I should start creating videos for my music so people would be more, they'll sit and watch a video over just sitting and listening to something. So I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So my husband got me a really nice video camera, and I started messing with it and started researching different video editors, and how to go about doing this. And it was honestly, I just taught myself how to do it. It was all trial and error, and it took some time to figure out how to do it and to be decent at it. And I'm not saying that I'm amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a work in progress. The thing is I didn't have the money to spend on having somebody professionally do it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, I didn't have the money to go to some studio and lay down, $6,000 to have something done. So I'm just like, well, I can make do with just doing it myself. So I found good video editors and got a decent camera and just started messing with it till I, figured it out. And I'm still learning.
Right.
They're still, amateur, but I'm getting there. I'm learning, new techniques and ways to make it better. And so you gotta learn about angles and lighting, and it's a whole new world that I had to teach myself how to do. In the day and age that we live, everything changes so much that
Yes.
once you learn something, you got to relearn it again because something new's come out.
Right.
So you got to stay up to date with the changes, especially in the music and the art world. It's not just about doing your craft. Now it's about, how do I promote? How do I market? How do I get people to see my stuff online? It's it's completely different now than it was 20 or 30 years ago, or even 10 years ago for that matter.
Yes.
It's so many more things that go into what we do. It's not just, I can't just sit down and paint something and somebody's going to come buy it. It's, oh, well, we got to figure out how to market this on Facebook or Instagram or Etsy or whatever you're using. And how do I get people to see this? And all the tricks of the trade. It's exhausting.
For
So
anybody
maybe
who,
even you with your YouTube stuff,
right, yeah, like, and I'm still, this is, everything's trial by fire with this, and it's a shoestring budget, it's just kind of,
is, and that's
but
what we work with.
my goal is I said the minute that creating stuff for YouTube and talking stuff like this on YouTube is no longer fun, that's when it's time to quit. And I'm sure you got a
Exactly.
very similar philosophy on your art. But I did want to ask you, in case there's anybody listening to this who is trying to create their own music videos or is trying to shoot something with along those lines. What apps or software do you use? What kind of equipment do you use? In case they check out your music videos after this and like it and would like to emulate or at least film in the same style, do you feel comfortable sharing what you use?
Yeah, my goodness. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have people that I could, ask questions of and stuff. It's, we're all in this together. So I feel we need to be able to help each other. So, yeah, my video camera is just, and in fact, it's by today's standards, is old now. It's probably about 7 years old, and it's a Samsung mini video recorder. And at the time when we got it, it was top of the line. It was like a $600 or $700 video camera, if I remember correctly, which was a big, that was a lot of money for us to spend at that time. But I wanted something that could do high quality HD, 4K type, videos. So that's what I have. I mean, it could be any brand of video camera, just as long as it records, at least HD or whatever, the top quality is that you can get. The software that I use, it's called Wondershare Filmora. Um, it's a it costs. It's not a free software. I pay a yearly subscription to it. Now I've wanted to get into Adobe. Uh, uh, oh, it just slipped my mind.
Premiere?
Thank you. I kept wanting Photoshop, and I'm like, no, it's not Photoshop. Premium. But honestly, it's so expensive.
Yes, it
Like,
is.
I'm not paying that much, and it's really confusing. It's a big learning curve if you're using that.
Oh
And
yeah,
I'm just like, I don't mess with that. I'll go with something a little less. And there's a few other things out there right now that I want to get into. I need to learn more about color grading and some different things like that with my videos. There's a lot I'm still trying to learn, and I kind of learn as I go. But yeah, those are the products that I use. You can go out and download that. It's Wondershare Filmora, and they actually even have a phone app that you can do it on your phone. Of course, it takes up a lot of room and space, but I've used it on my phone too. But I try not to use my phone for any kind of music videos. I think I might have used it for like a couple of them, but I try to use a good quality video camera, um, to do my stuff, to get it as the best quality that I can. And even at that, my stuff is still pretty amateur, but I it's okay. It's for where I'm at and what I'm trying to do right now. It works. So
I think it's great. Yeah, I was really impressed, and that's why I definitely wanted to ask you about that in case, may not necessarily for music videos, but if I wanted to if I wanted to up my production a little bit, that sounds
sure,
like
yeah,
a.
definitely.
You mentioned that you've traveled and you've, for where we're located, Nashville, Tennessee is still a little bit of a hike. What are some of the places, the furthest places you traveled to play music?
Um, Let's see. So I have, of course, Florida. I've gone down to Florida. I've been flown down to Florida to do some stuff there. Um, Iowa, way up northern Iowa. I've traveled up there and done some stuff at some big casinos up there. I have, let me think. Anywhere, any state touching Illinois
Right.
or surrounding any of the states around Illinois, I've traveled to those places. Um, Trying to think of some others that I've done a lot of traveling, but not all of it has been for music. So I'm trying to make sure I get the rest separated out a little bit. So those are some of the places that I travel to for music. I used to be in a band in St. Louis and played a lot of big venues in St. Louis, like Westport and some different places like that. Some of the big casinos in St. Louis and things like that. I played. I go up to Decatur a lot. They have a big
Okay.
Decatur Fest, Summer Fest. And of course, it got canceled this year, but I played with a group that opened up for the what's a it's a Christian band, Crowder, but a lot of
Okay.
people know who Crowder is. I got to open up for Crowder a couple summers ago. Some different things like that. So being a freelance violinist, I play with so many different people that I get a lot of opportunities. Um, they had last summer in Terre Haute, Indiana, a big blues festival that I got to play at with a friend of mine. So I do a lot of weddings. So if any of you need a violinist for a wedding, call me. So, but yeah, so I've been flown different places. I've been over in Ohio. Some people flew me out to go play at a big thing in Ohio, and so it just depends on because I play so many different styles of music that it just depends on the function as to what I'm doing. But yeah, so I've traveled quite a bit.
Do you have a
So
particular memorable a trip to play music, anywhere, any kind that really sticks in your mind, or any good stories from your travels and playing the violin?
um oh my goodness, I've played so much. Uh Back right out of college, I lived in Nashville, Tennessee for about 3 or 4 years. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with Nashville, but there's a little hole in the wall place called Station Inn downtown, and it's a huge hotspot for bluegrass, all the big name bluegrass people. And they had a jam there every weekend. And I remember when I lived there, I used to go to Station Inn to jam at. That was a lot of fun because there were some amazing bluegrass musicians there. And I was really young. I was 21, 22 years old. But I learned a lot sitting in with some of those big name, those big bluegrass players and sitting and jamming. So that was a real memorable music experience. Um, I played with the Paducah Symphony, about 5 years ago, and that was a lot of fun. Some good memories playing with the symphony. I loved classical music, so that was a lot of fun too. Um, I I played with a country band in St. Louis, and traveled. We traveled quite a bit to different places. I remember we went to Indianapolis and did a big convention there for all of the state fairs for in Indiana, and it was like a showcase, and we were asked to come and like play for this showcase. And of course, as a country band, everybody wanted to hear "Devil Went Down to Georgia." So in memory of Charlie Daniels,
Yes,
who
I'm
just
about to say unfortunate at the time of the recording he just passed
yeah,
away.
that was always a big crowd favorite. Is when we always did "Devil Went Down to Georgia." So
Did
I
you ever get the honor of seeing Charlie Daniels play in person?
no, I never did. I got to see some other great violinists, but never Charlie Daniels. That was never got the pleasure of seeing or meeting him.
He was about 11 years ago uh, doing a local fair, and I didn't want to go because I was starving college kid at the time, and like, Charlie Daniels just not, I like Devil Went Down to Georgia, but I don't know if I want to spend the money just to go hear Devil Went Down to Georgia live. And then ever since I'm like, damn, I wish I would have. Um, who are some of the ones that you've gotten to see live, if you would like to say?
So my idol, the one that I grew up listening to, his name is Mark O'Connor, and I don't know how many people know of him, but I've gotten to meet him several different times. Absolutely amazing violinist and musician, not just violin, but guitar, mandolin, any of it. It's just absolutely amazing. So I've gotten to meet him and see him live. I remember I used to go to bluegrass festivals all the time. And if any of you are fiddle players or know anything about bluegrass music, one of the most popular fiddle songs is the Orange Blossom Special. And the guy that wrote that song, his name was Chubby Wise. I remember I was at a bluegrass festival, and there was out in the lobby where this festival was at, there was this guy selling violins. And I sat there one day, went through every single one of those violins and played them all. I was probably like 16 years old because I just loved hearing all the different sounds of them. And I remember Chubby Wise, I guess, had been sitting in there. He was very famous bluegrass musician, violin player. And he came up to me and he said, you're doing pretty good there, gal. He said, you just hang in there like a rusty old fish hook, and you'll be something someday. And that really meant a lot to me because I had a lot of respect for Chubby Wise and the fact that he sat there listening to me and told me to hang in there like a rusty old fish hook. But I actually got to meet all Bill Monroe. I got to meet him. I actually got to go on his tour bus and meet him at a
That's pretty cool.
yeah, it was right before he died too. He was really sick, I remember, at that convention, but he still played, and he ran out of the place before I could go meet him. I just wanted to meet him because it's Bill Monroe. I mean, my goodness. And my mom said, "Well, let's just go out to the tour bus and see if they'll let you meet him." I'm like, "Mom, no." How embarrassing. But I remember they were like, "Yeah." Bill Monroe was like, "Come on in," and I got to meet him and got his autograph, and he was just a really special guy. And I got to meet him. That was a big deal. I couldn't have been more than probably 15 or 16 years old at the time, but it was pretty amazing. And I remember in high school I went to a Mark O'Connor fiddle camp, and all of the great fiddle players that if you know anything about the fiddle world, they were all there, and I got to meet with them and play music with them, and that was pretty amazing. I was young enough that I didn't appreciate it as much as I should have at the time, but
Right.
looking on it now, it's pretty amazing. But yeah, so I've gotten a lot of opportunities with my music, and I'm hoping to get more. I'm just honestly with music, I the Lord gave me the ability, and I want to use it, and I want to make people happy with it. So that same goes with my art. I like to do art. I like to make people happy with it. So if it's something that can bring joy to somebody, I'm all for it.
Is there any goals that you would still have yet to achieve, or that you're looking, to achieve by the end of the year, by the end of next year, because of everything going on this year with your music or your art? Anything that's you're really working towards on the horizon?
Yeah, my ultimate goal, one thing I've always wanted to do with my music especially, um, is I want to be a studio musician where and I kind of already am, especially in the area. A lot of people call on me for, their studio projects and stuff. But I'd ultimately like to get in the graces of musicians in like Nashville, Tennessee, where I could be a fiddle player that they'd call. Oh, well, Holly can do that. We'll call her. We'll have her come in and do this. A lot of the studios have their go-to people that they call on to work on projects. And I would love to be that person, but a lot of it's politics. It's not always what you can do, it's who you know. And I just apparently don't know those people yet.
Um, so to wrap this up, do you? Well, first of all, let them how they follow you if they want to get a commission or check out your music or
Yeah,
just
I love doing commissions. I do all kinds of commissions, everything from pet portraits to anything you want. You can go to Polly Launay Art on Facebook. You can look me up there, send me a message on there. Um, I do have an Etsy page. You just put my name in on Etsy, you can find me there. I think I'm a Polly Launay Art on there as well. You can even contact me through Instagram. On Instagram, though, I'm violinist Polly Launay. I kind of started that as more of a music page, but it kind of became art and music. So you can contact me on Instagram as well. So, yeah, and I have a YouTube channel. If you want to check out my music, go to YouTube. I've got everything from classical to pop to bluegrass. Everything's on there. If you like music, check me out there. But yeah, I love doing commissions for people. I do everything. But on my Polly Launay Art Facebook page, you can scroll through, and I try to put almost everything that I do on there. So you can look through and see what all have done in the past. And yeah, I still got a lot for sale too. So just let me know. And I have a lot of prints too. If you don't want to pay for the original art, I've got prints of a lot of stuff. So just give me a shout out. Love to do
absolutely.
something cool.
And I want to thank you personally for agreeing to do the interview. It's really we talk about networking at the conventions. That's what this is all about. Because if it wasn't for conventions, I never would have found out that have a really great artist. Kind of living in the same area as me, and then also would have learned a lot about the music industry and music videos in this interview that I didn't expect to learn. So that's pretty cool.
Kind of took an unexpected turn, but I appreciate you talking with me, and I'd love to meet everybody out there that listens to this. Just give me a shout out. I'll talk to you about whatever you want to talk about, or do some art for you, or whatever. So I like to meet people. So
And we appreciate you being on here, and I appreciate everybody for giving this a listen. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like, share, subscribe for more content, and go follow me on my social media pages at facebook.com/athleticgeek89, Twitter at athletic_geek89, and on Instagram at athleticgeek89. Miss Launay, thanks once again. I really
thank,
appreciate this.
thank you
And
so much.
so, thank you from all of us here, and we'll see you next time.